Hello, good evening, and thanks again for joining us on another edition of Ideas Exchange. This is the first for the year 2023, and we expect that throughout the year our conversations, our thoughts on national discourse will help to shape policy. We weave through the thinking of those at the helm of affairs to think about Ghana first, and how we can work together to improve our conditions as a people and to march forward towards the total development of our country. Just a few days ago, many of us were relaxing at home because it was declared National Constitution Day. This reflects 30 years of our journey since we subscribed to the 1992 Constitution. But many people are asking questions. Is it worth it for us to sit home and relax when we could have used those productive hours to help to raise revenue, for example, to improve on our financial resources? Or it was worth it for us again to sit back and ask ourselves, 30 years on, where are we? How far have we come? Or are we retrogressing as a people? And do you have faith in our country called Ghana? Tonight, I'm going to do this conversation with somebody many of us have known over the years, not because he's a lecturer or he's a senior citizen, but because he has consistently demonstrated his passion for public good. He's a retired lecturer. Tonight, I am having this conversation with him at the Soil Science Department at the University of Ghana. So you would know that the person I'm going to introduce is the person you have known on your TV set or you have listened to on your radio set 10, 15, 20 years ago. But this is a man who felt Ghana because he's an Nkrumahist, a former general secretary of the Convention People's Party, and somebody who I will show to your screen now is Professor Ninoy Dwabo. I'm sure this name is not strange to you, but this conversation will talk about Ghana and where we have been. Prof, you are welcome.
Thank you very much, and very privileged to know that this is a premier program. I'm the first to appear for this year, so give thanks to your station and then above all thanks to God.
Now, Prof, so when you sit back and reflect on those who are coming after you, and you see a Ghana that began a journey again in 1992, the Fourth Republic, what crosses your heart?
If you look at some of us, and if I use myself as an example, we grew up in the 60s. I always say with a sense of pride that I was born in Nima. If anybody knew Nima at that time, it was a deprived community. But the socio-economic environment was such that, notwithstanding the challenges that existed, you could develop your God-given talent through an educational system, through an economic environment where the parents who were involved in some menial jobs could provide for our basic needs. That enabled us to go to school and by the grace of God to be where we are. And because of younger generation, we were like them some years ago, so naturally life succession is such that the elderly leave the stage. In most probable term, the young people are dying, but the rule is that older people leave the stage for younger people. That maintains the growth and then the human cycle. So if you look back and then you just oppose it with what we have at the moment, you can't help but feel very sad. The lack of opportunities for the younger generation, lack of hope, and greater despondency. And it is in this light that you look at the political system that entrust the power and resources of the country in the hands of elected people. And they are to be the custodians to guide and then nurture this power, the power that incorporates physical power as well as managing the resources of the country to provide opportunities for all. And so the case is backdrop that if things are not happening well, as a senior citizen, as a father or grandfather, there's every cause for you to be worried. And that is, for me, the pain when you look back, thinking that 30 years, or for that matter, 60, next March will be how many years? 67 years, is that not it? 66 years after independence, we will be where we are in this economic mess. We dilate on them, and then you see how where we are now, the way everybody has been adversely affected in one way or the other. You have to have a pain in your heart. But we are not at the end of the program. I always
tell people the breath of life is not controlled by any mortal, let alone our political leadership of present day, but it's controlled by God. And once God has not denied us, or has not shown any cause to deny us of that valuable property that is the breath of life, we have to keep hope alive.
Now, but while we look at the preamble for this conversation we are having tonight, I would want us to read through your mind to reflect the thinking of many elderly people like you, the euphoria at the time when the Consultative Assembly was putting together 1992 Constitution, and then reflecting on the pains, or perhaps what some would say few positives, from the military dictatorship that saw the overthrow of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, how people and what they were expecting when the 1992 Constitution was eventually adopted. What was the euphoria at that time, and what was the expectation? It was almost like a new independence, so to call.
I will also react by putting it this way, that at times I ask myself, when I chat with contemporaries, I said, is that the type of governance system that the revolution brought forth?
You see, and when you look at happenings of today, you wonder, well, the euphoria, was it in 1992? Note that the PNDC had been there from 31st December, and by the late 80s there was a global movement, you know, during the, and I think the break point was the breakdown of the Soviet Union bloc, or for that matter the thawing of the Cold War, and what we now call the unipolar world. In the past, or preceding that particular landmark year, because if there was a takeover of upheaval anywhere globally, when you align with the East, then obviously you had comfort. If it is pro-West and you align with the West, you also had comfort. So coup d'etat or military uprising or political upheaval were the order of the day. But then and you know, no matter whether the regime was despotic, dictatorial, or whatever negative terms you could align to the system of governance, once you had solace in your support from the West, you had all the support. So we had the Mobutus, you understand, then we had the left-leaning governments like what we had in Ethiopia, etc. But then when the Cold War ended, there was a global move that, look, despite all the support we've given, whether you are from the left solely or from the West or anywhere, democracy was at the heart of it. And there was a global movement towards that. So it became imperative that the BNDC had to move along with the wave. And there was this, the late Justice Anna, may so rest in peace, committee that toured the country, and gradually everything melted into the need to go back to political party constitutional governance. Then came the Consultative Assembly, which was like a People's Assembly that crafted the present day constitution, which was also adopted in the referendum in, I think, April 1992. And that paved way for our elections, first presidential elections, first week in November. Then the following month, December, was the parliamentary elections. Then in 1993, 7th January, we got started with the Fourth Republic. Now when you take a profile through and to the present day, you wonder. For instance, we all took part in Kubopreko against the VAT. when the first government of the Fourth Republic, that Jerry Rawlings' first term, tried to introduce the value-added tax. All the opposition parties got together, massive demonstration in Accra, elsewhere, and for some reason it was withdrawn and repolished and presented during the second term of Jerry Rawlings in '96. And then you take a walk on 27 or 26 years later, you introduce e-levy, demonstrations, etc., and then it is bulldozed. It went through, and then we are back. That the concerns and the genuine projections that were raised by people, that you could not attain the figure, the projections, or for that matter, the revenue expectations could not be attained. We are back in a situation where we are now at 1%. Whether that itself will rake in more revenues and a different thing. Then you look at what happened in the Secretary Republic and measure it. That necessitated measure it against what we are doing. Measure it against what we are doing in recent years. And you wonder where the place is scale.
But we have tasted regimes under Rawlings, the late. And then former President John Ajay Kufuor took over. We have late President Mills, for example. And so it is the same constitution that has seen different governments, rulers over the period. Is it a result of our collective failure as a people that perhaps has culminated into what some may describe as the level of impunity, or I don't care?
Precisely that.
I don't care.
Precisely that. Precisely that. Precisely that. And also, it takes two. Then our collective irresponsibility or responsibility, and then those also in government. You see, a couple of months ago, the issue about the constitution was raised, and then Lawyer Chikata made a point that, in his opinion, he didn't see anything much wrong with the constitution, but it is the type of, or the people, caliber of people in power. In as much as it may sound true, why do we make laws? Laws are there, it's a codification.
You see, a couple of months ago, the issue about the constitution was raised, and then Chikata made a point that, in his opinion, he didn't see anything much wrong with the constitution, but it is the type of, or the people, caliber of people in power. In as much as it may sound true, why do we make laws? Laws are there, it's a codification of what should be done properly, or what is not right, that should be done. So what is not right, that should not be done, and what is right, that should be done. That's the essence of a law. And of course, we reenact laws, we amend laws, we reenact certain provisions, etc., based on experience. So I belong to the school of thought that thinks that the constitution needs a thorough review in the light of our experiences. Now I have a couple of them. November 2020, we went to elections a month after the American elections. Biden, after a long tussle about Donald Trump accepting or not accepting the results, eventually was declared the winner. The Georgia, one of the Senate seats, I think I can't just put my fingers on what happened, but there was a dispute. There was a dispute, so it had to be rerun. And after, I think it was rerun after the inauguration. And Joe Biden and the hierarchy of the Democratic Party took to the campaign in Georgia. And you know, the sole aim to make sure that the Democratic candidate won. You see? And why? Because they needed that one vote to tilt the balance of power in the Senate. And one of the reasons was to enable President Biden to push through certain legislations. And the most important of it all was to roll out assistance package to families. The most powerful president of the most powerful and the wealthiest country. But you could see a sense that he could not do that without Senate approval. So indirectly, you have to make sure you get what must be done properly, that is getting the
to get the constitutional backing through the legislature.
Now we have a constitution, and take note, I believe everything President Akufo-Addo is doing is constitutional. So then the question will be, would anybody do it differently? If President Akufo, we went through President Akufo's time, did we call for that? Even though he himself acknowledged that there were some challenges in implementing certain aspects of the constitution. But here we are, that President Akufo-Addo, then candidate, was campaigning on free SHS. We overheard him on the BBC interview when the persistent question from the BBC,
how it was going to cost it,
and it didn't come clear. He carried that through, and somehow he won, and then he ruled it out with whose money. And I have always raised the point that you and I, my children, went to Christ the King. You understand? I believe others, and in fact, if you want to talk about the good schools that will place your child in the position to move higher from BAC or from junior high to senior high, then you need to go to the preparatory. In fact, many of our communities, the public schools, we went to public schools and they were excellent. That's the schools that nurtured us
at the time.
They still exist and they are still not bad. But what is available and what is competitive is the preparatory schools. I believe all of us, you pay over 3,000 cedis a term. You understand? For the basics that we have. From preparatory school to JHS, because it's basic. You transport your child daily, week after week, term after term. So class 1, 3 terms, up to class 6, 18 terms. JHS 1, 2, 3, 9 terms, added 27 terms. You'll be paying 3,000 on the average every day, moving and going and coming. Your child qualifies to go to, say, Infancy, then a government will say, don't pay, I will pay for you. Even if you are working and you are a millionaire, say, don't pay, I will pay for you. And you are not using your father's legacy money. You are using our money. And Parliament approves it. So you see the nature of the Constitution. Has the President done anything wrong in implementing the free SHS, 1D, 1F? You understand? So you ask yourself, where are the loopholes? And if it is subject to the caliber or the thinking or the mindset of whoever occupies the presidency or leads the country, then there must be something wrong with the Constitution.
Shouldn't this bother more on wisdom and common sense rather than patching to please?
If that were so, then we wouldn't even have any laws in our statute books. If we are guided, we are Christians, we are Muslims, or we believe, we have faith in God, and any religion preaches virtues. You understand? Don't do this, don't do that, responsible behavior. If that is the way we live, then we don't need any legislation. We should be guided by common sense. But unfortunately, that's not the situation. And so where we are, we take the experiences of the past 30 years and look at certain aspects of the Constitution. For instance, I have noticed something when you said you were coming. Take the Supreme Court. You understand? And Article 128.1 talks about the constitution of the composition of the Supreme Court.
Right.
And they say the Supreme Court shall comprise the Chief Justice and not less than 9 justices. You see? So you say it's guided by. But then we are complaining or talking about this current president who has appointed more people to the Supreme Court. Has he done anything unconstitutional?
Not really.
Not really. You see? And should we leave it? Should we leave the upper limit indefinite or infinite? Look at the United States of America. Over 200 years of democracy or constitutional governance. 9. It doesn't mean that the justices of the Supreme Court don't have political or ideological leanings, but that is the way they are structured.
There are issues about principle. There are issues about wise men in town who may be too silent, that may also be feeding into these narratives.
But can we say that I once asked somebody, so in the light of all that is happening, those in government are not close to the corridors of power, but there are wise people, knowledgeable people, statesmen in the MPP. Do they talk to the president? I don't think.
And does he listen?
Maybe he listens, but nobody knows the situation in which he is, whether he's committed to an idea and he thinks he means well. Maybe his God has spoken to him And so in as much as he listens to your advice, he also thinks he means well and he's doing well. Who knows? So it doesn't mean you should tie the hands of anybody in a position of authority prescribed or described by the Constitution. But when we look at experience is the best teacher. You understand? So, and it's our parliament also. You understand? Our parliament. Once again, when you look at Article 93(1), it's talking about a parliament that should be have a composition of members not less than 140. So the upper limit too is left off. So we started in 92, or the first parliament, with 200. Today we came through 230, I think 2004,
and now we have 275.
And that loose law, that loose end, means that the next parliament, because you know
there are already constitutions of creating new constituencies.
Yeah, they must have a representation. You don't eliminate one by creating one, so you add on representation of the people. And is that the way we want to go? And then just suppose that with now the district assemblies, the local government, where 241 also talks about the assemblies, that the initial number of districts or the local government system, the 138 at the beginning of the implementation of the 1992 constitution will be the minimum number. And today we are over 260. And the way it is in this parliament, Article 2.12 says that parliament then will redraw or redesign the boundaries. So the redesigning or redrawing the boundaries or redefining the boundaries means, from what we have realized, creating more. Now you and I know that obviously if you develop authority or the governance system in it, then you ensure better socio-economic development. But over the last 30 years, can we say the assemblies have done what they should be doing? And I always cite which will be now the Ghana West or whatever, Amasama as
an example.
Back in the 70s, when we talk of Ghana rural, stretching from Adan all the way to Militia Amanfo, the boundaries of Accra, Amasama was the headquarters. And they've cut off and reduced the jurisdiction, and for that matter, the extent of authority. Then concentrating rather your scope of activity. Have you been to Amasama?
I've been there.
Yes. Do you have a good lorry station?
It doesn't reflect the Amasama market we knew several years ago.
Market, apart from the little one that if you branch off to Tree Junction, by the police station, we still do our traditional commercial activity on the
main road,
on the Bay F.
But where is the missing link? And the reason why I'm doing so, and for those of you who have joined us, I'm having this conversation with Professor Nino Duwana, and we are within the cozy environment, the science department here at the University
of going free vegetation cover.
But the cashew tree reminds me of what you do most. I went to your research department and I saw a lot of activity going on. We will go into those ones. And just recently, you would have noticed that the level of political party activism, either within the opposition or the ruling party. Just yesterday, Alan Shamantin was speaking to the nation. We will just go into a little of some of those things he has raised. But the question I wanted to draw your attention to was that in 1992, when the public was being psyched to buy into multi-party democracy, there was this issue about Kebimami Kebi. So the people were being empowered to understand that the days of the centralized government where you want to wait for the president to visit your village during festivals, for the chiefs to tell the president all their needs, for him to go to Accra and decide, was going to be such that this assembly system, from the unit committees to the assembly into whatever will make them recipients of anything, no matter which form.
Yeah, obviously.
What went wrong along the line?
The words for everybody. I may not have I can do some diagnosis, but I believe the reasons or causes might be varied or are varied, and any other fellow can also put in his or her viewpoint. But you see, the district assembly or the local government concept is excellent everywhere. That's it. That's why, like the US or Nigeria, a vast country, is a federal because they have states. We have regions, and we decided to even go lower. But what happened, I cannot perhaps tell. Why is it there's so much aloofness or despondency, to the extent that even if we are despondent and we don't participate, and the assembly with the DCE, you see, is playing its role, we can feel it. You see, we can feel it.
But you can feel it when the District Assembly Common Fund is, for example,
that's what I'm saying,
allocated to your office timeously for you to be able to use for whatever you want.
Now it is even capped. You see, the Assembly Fund is capped for whatever economic reason. So the Common Fund, 5% of total revenue that should go into the Common Fund, how is it legislated that the current government will cap it? You understand? So I always say, let's start from Accra, then we can have a clearer picture of what is outside Accra. Look at the number of sub-metros that have been created. You see, and I live at Hato. You just take off from the Agboba Road, and everywhere, you don't have drainage, no good roads, water flows occasionally, and that is Accra. That is Accra. So you can imagine what happens elsewhere. You see, what development, and we're talking about the Amasaman thing, and we just got off. There are people just living within the environs, suburban areas around Amasaman as a center. They don't have water. If you see the roads that go through, the link roads, awful, not graded, etc. And the assemblies are supposed to be what you would call the governments. And that's the district assembly. The chief executive is the president of the district. And the assembly is the parliament. And look at the haphazard development. No socioeconomic activity. So the law is said that any government is doing what is right. So we have 260 assemblies. So the common fund for 5%, where we are not even mobilizing enough revenue, you share it among the assemblies. So here you have Accra Metropolitan Assembly. Also now, the area of influence is concentrated. But even does Ama collect property rates? So a colleague who is in the construction industry told me that, look, it's estimated that a property located on Accra, Ama's jurisdiction, if you want to quantify the value, is more than the economy of the Gambia in West Africa. But I believe Ama takes a bite from the common fund. Elsewhere, you should even knock off Ama from the common fund.
Because they can depend on the property rate. But Doc, you'd recall that in the late 70s and to some extent in the 90s, because the 70s, the 80s were more of dictatorial regime era. You had student activism, which was so strong that at a point, students alone could push government to listen. The labor fronts were very powerful to the extent that their voice or the strong signal alone, speaking to policy issues, could change government's decision. But today it is not so.
Yeah.
What went wrong?
That's another question that I can say I don't have an answer, but it's a fact. It's happened. Now our students are in session. They are coming. Next week we start lectures, and what they will be aiming at will be to contest SRC elections, contest NUC's election wherever the NUC seat is, and then JCR elections and some of the professional bodies elections. And I bet you, if you see the posters that the students put up, because I don't have the facts, but there's no doubt that they get support from elsewhere. So that broad student activism that really influenced opinion and also push governments to listen had given way to what you call an environment where students who are projecting their future political aspirations will use the platform of any elected position to get to those positions. And that's now the trend.
So if the bane of all our problems has to do with politicians, why should we pride ourselves that we are practicing democracy and therefore it is the best option for our country?
Oh, obviously, I share the point President Mahama made in the heady moments around August, September, when things were terrible and people started speculating about a coup or uprising. He made a point that, look, maybe he didn't address a particular arms, but he said, let's have faith in our democracy. I think it was a very timely thing, because notwithstanding anything, it's the best option, because no matter what, you have the option to change government. And we have one come next year. So we should have faith. And these are all lessons for us. We had the American system of governance in terms of the structure of the governance, where parliament was just parliament, like Congress. And the executive didn't have any hand in there. And the coup took place, but at least there was a positive note. In July 1981, the budget of President Liman was defeated. And it was a unanimous decision or majority decision of the parliament, both the PNP and the rest of the opposition. You understand? Then came the hybrid. I believe the hybrid that we now practice might also have come as a result of the experiences we had in the past. In the Second Republic, it was a Westminster type, where the Prime Minister was in Parliament with his cabinet. So they initiated decisions or policies and they came to push through. But now you have a hybrid system, and what we have seen is one of the reasons why we also need to look at our constitution. You sit in cabinet as majority leaders. Take our current majority leader, Honorable Chairman Samboso, with his, he is a minister, so for that matter, he has official seat in cabinet. They decide to bring e-levy, and then he comes, and the minister, by the constitutional or the standing orders, has to come and present his budget with his proposals and revenue mobilization strategies for Parliament to discuss and bless within the authority given them by the Constitution. Where do you find the role of the majority leader, a minister, being part of the decision, and then now he comes
being part of the cooking and cannot be part of
that is where we are where we are.
Okay, but sir, we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at what can be the best approach to get out of this quagmire. Many talk about impunity, arrogance, abuse of power. Some have even lost faith in our judicial system. You talk about education, people don't know the direction for our future leaders, and many things are bothering Ghanaians. Could it be a reason why some have even said that they are not going to vote again? And if they will not vote, because that is the only means Ghanaians can use to change what is not good today, if it is, to a better tomorrow, if we have better structures to help us move forward. If we don't do it at all because you have lost faith, what does it mean to you? I'll be back. My guest is Professor Ninoy Dwabo, and we are bringing this conversation to you from the University of Ghana, and to be specific, Department of Soil Science.
What Parliament did not approve of was only part of the seed money that government said it would give year by year. Part of the seed money, not the money, entire money that is needed to construct and complete the edifice. People have said that there has not been transparency, but every year in the budget there has been some seed money, not taken, from what I understand, from the consolidated fund. But I hear there's something called consolidated vote, which means there's a vote that is given. I don't know how it's used, but so that was going to be the seed money. But it does not mean that the project cannot go on.
Is this National Cathedral a pledge to God by someone, a personal pledge to God, or a pledge to God on behalf of the people of this country? There are two things. So if you don't get the parameters right, if the foundation or the Japanese say if the Nawaza, the what you are doing on the tatami is wrong, you put in on the foundation. And personally, this man this one to me is a matter between the president and God, and not between Ghana and God. You have to separate the two.
So
I was not there when God, I'll be a cathedral for you. So why should I pay 100 Ghana cedi? I will not pay.
National Cathedral. Sika amati seba sene ye be 400 and over million Ghana cedis. When we be a National Cathedral no ote. Be bubu ye den nti da bi endru anya de. Nhwe. When we be ote. Basandi eti akoka. Asofufo abewom nso obentiem yi. Asofufo abewom be ntie ni yi. Na sa oye asofo no be ma sika titiri di yi. Say ye de oye National Cathedral. Na se otefom se ya na beni na sofo so diska na sofo diska dia na do man hene so ba da se na media mana bro so onkoyi cause untimi say sika titiri di we na ba bia yeteni opa 400 million na ba say na ba de 80 no koka ho no se bono region se Ghana for diska we mama nka dia de ba ye no Ghana ni bia be bono sa abefasa akonwan emra Ghana Ubia kacho say ni anwunyem oboa Ghana na emu bi yenka nokore ye kata nsem so na sesi say wo de ka na wo ntimi ntua oka na ka na ye wo manim wo yuti haircut ono obia be kacho say sikasem wo Ghana ekoso yesi ne wu without I will say as domahene sabe akonwa ntiso yi akonwa kakraka we ade wo ho na mami bedi tro ansana manya ni monyam menye bi da mbedi egu se samre ya ye wo mi ye wa hie hiem fie ye twa etisu haircut na najima mbadu nkoko ka be ngonafa mde mi ni bi afa ye ya bunufo ede na ye ni wo mu se first vice no ankonofo azoka amboa manhu shari aite manhu fifi kote manhu yami saminya vinga ho hanabisi unga ho hey nua no MPP for no kure ni benyina ye se nka se na manchirem a anhwe a yewura 17 on Justin Kodua bebeka se mebo behu na mo bi ehu ne ma hu se ba NDC for bayi be no be shi papa de papa ya ohwe ade kura nde pe na se me ye se wabi sane bibi amunamuni ma on the spur of the moment kwana obefa so obede obeyi wa no 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 se nipa we na dwenem edo wo nyansa edu akire when da bibia ase delegates no odu ba bia bi no bedan fie delegates anamwa ase edu nkatia nko a chairman general no nko anyede on fie delegate assemblyman adibi IMP akodi minister akoya general secretary enne akoya national chairman we dini ande man wo fia efri na ekon dini na nkita bi no de bia ma no osagefo osiade yo asiedu enkatia chema mego chema meka chema jenga asa
corruption and petty theft or thievery, particularly from the public purse, deny our country the benefits of utilizing its tax revenue and other resources for the development of our country. 4, the arrogance of power has been a major obstruction to progress in our country. People in positions of authority must understand that leadership is an opportunity to serve the people and not to lord over them. In servant leadership, humility is an asset and not a weakness. 5, passion for excellence. As a country, we must celebrate competence and excellence and not mediocrity. 6, as a people, we must focus more on getting things done than just talking. Ghana is gradually becoming a NATO country. No action, talk only.
Ghanaians are looking up to us to be the choice because we're a better alternative. We must not win by default of the lapses of this administration, but we must win because we are the better alternative to govern this country. And I've heard many people say that when we win power, we must do exactly as the MPP are doing. But I dare say, there's no use fighting for political power if we're going to commit the same mistakes and abuses the MPP has inflicted on.
Yamamwakwa baba Suhum Rural Bank. Ya wonsheshe ya hodo bi te se dwadifo abosia, ekwokuo bosia, susu account. And it does all savings account. Me bada chain savings account. And the keka ho. Suhum Rural Bank was 03422919896. Now one so what to me aka say.
Suhum Rural Bank. Ama ene mayeka una.
Suhum Rural Bank. Enti me pa minie.
Suhum Rural Bank, growing our heritage.
Welcome to Auto Check Vehicle Diagnostic and Licensing Center.
I hear my car can be checked here without going to so many hour crap.
Sure.
Emission, check.
Alignment, check.
Brakes, check.
Visit Auto Checks at Koforidua Aquadum Road for the roadworthiness of your vehicle, from saloon cars to heavy-duty industrial vehicles. Madam, your car is now ready for the road.
Thank you so much. Auto Checks, check.
Auto Checks, your safety, our priority.
Auto Checks.
The average human body mass should have at least 60% water for optimal performance in any physical or mental exercise. We can help you maintain it naturally. X Natural Mineral Water. Simply natural.
Welcome back. This is Ideas Exchange on TV XYZ. My guest is Professor Nino Iduwona. He's a former lecturer. He's currently at the University of Ghana, and he's also a former General Secretary of the Convention People's Party. Many of us know him already. He's been very, very frank with his opinion on issues that bother all of us as a people. Our conversation is about Ghana, our constitution, how far we have traveled, things that have gone on wrong, and whether it is collective or really the sole responsibility of our politicians is another matter. And that is the conversation. While we were going for a break, I was asking a question. We know some people just say, I'm fed up. I don't even want to vote again. I don't care. So who should decide for you? Now, Prof, let me just put it this way. There is somebody who has just come out of a system that is governing us today. And I'm making reference to Alan Tremantin. He aspires to be a president of Ghana tomorrow. Now, yesterday he addressed the media and he raised some critical issues. It could be generalized, it could be skewed towards the current regime, depending on how people want to see it. For example, he talks about the arrogance of power has been a major obstruction to progress in our country. People in position of authority must understand the leadership as an opportunity to serve the people and not to lord themselves over them. In servant leadership, humility is an asset and not a weakness. Then he talks about passion for excellence, and he says as a country we must celebrate competence and excellence and not mediocrity. Then he talks about downsizing government, where he talks about the architecture of government to be overhauled when it becomes government. Do they sound like rhetorics of a typical politician on a platform taking advantage of the thinking of the poor Ghanaian, or something that reflects the double standard of the typical politician, not really narrowing to him as an individual?
You know, we politicians have been described or characterized as people espousing the art of the doable. What cannot be done, we say, is doable. But obviously, let's take his personality out. Having just come out of a system, I think some of the points he raised, arrogance, lack of humility, and many things, reflect issues that we have raised all along. You know, 3 years ago, I appeared on the TV program during the independence celebration, and I made a point that, you see, because of the deprivation, the poverty, etc., literacy, the demands that are placed on exercise of power or governance are, as we have in the West or in the advanced democracies, are not the same. So people just get into government and they behave as if they are doing us a favor. They don't value public opinion. They demonstrate clearly that they are not sensitive to the wishes and aspirations of the people. And I think we've seen it. Perhaps if this is reflected in this government and in previous governments. And I made a point that it will get to a point where you sit in the cozy environment of Flagstaff House and you sweat. And we are getting there. You see, by the sheer order of nature. That even people, Farmer Nyami, we are more browa, we don't care. But your own misdeeds, you see, or your own act of omission,
sweating at the Flagstaff House.
You will sweat. You think the president is having life easy? When even his own party people are calling for the head of the finance minister.
But he has just appointed
exactly,
him as
but nobody knows what is going on in his mind. And so let's give him a little time. We have heard, or it's been news has just filtered that there will be cabinet reshuffle. We don't know. But be that as it may, I believe honestly, he doesn't need to tell you. But if then they say there's no art to read the mind's construction from their face. But you don't tell me that the president is having life easy. It is clear. Look, this financial sector reform, people have made a point. It wasn't thought through clearly that you can use about 21 billion to sanitize or rationalize a 9 billion indebtedness. I have a little investment in a bank, I wouldn't mention names. 6,500. Early December, I went to check. I found my statement and it was 4,900. Then I asked the lady in the bank now, what does that mean? He said that is a market value that you have because your bank takes the investment small from everybody and then invest in bonds. So if
what they have as a big chunk is affected, it affects you.
So you have had your haircut?
Definitely. So if it is 6,300 and I've lost 1,500, and I put in my application for redeeming my money since 3rd December, I learned they are still struggling to pay those who had redemption applications as at 1st December, and that is a big bank. My daughter just had 1,500 money. She as a student that accrued a little interest to 1,006. You know her market value now 1,200. And in banking, confidence and good faith, that is a building block of banking. So what we are being told is that it's not worth investing, and the bankable population we all know is less than 3 million out of a 30 million population, and people are now finding it fit or appropriate to withdraw their money and keep in the house.
So is it an issue of Ghanaians are not angry enough? Because here's a case, for example,
maybe about our nature.
Here's a case, for example, there is a general call, and it is widespread, that sack your finance minister. And then you have your trade minister who resigns, and the president wants to slap you in the face by giving that same finance minister who must go an additional responsibility.
And so they initiated a censure motion, and it went to the logical end by voting. By the nature of the politics we practice, the overly partisanship, you see, lack of national character in our thinking or way of doing things. The president, you can say, is acting with impunity, but at the same time, what he's doing is constitutional. So these are, together with the other issues I've raised about the, we also say that, look, the Supreme Court is loaded with chronics. It's a debatable issue, but 9 out of 10, anybody who argues that way is also right. But if you were to have a terminal, the maximum 9, you only feel it if in your time there's vacancy.
Will you be surprised if there is change in government and voices many expect will speak truth to power, i.e. National Cathedral, don't abuse the people, use their money wisely, I don't care, several things going on wrong, and people appear not to care, or they are not aware, or they are not concerned? Who will keep quiet after a change of government, assuming it goes to another power, or when they resurrect and they are speaking? Will you be surprised?
You see, I wouldn't say I'll be surprised or not surprised, but I still have faith in my line of thinking for 3 years ago, as I told you, that by natural order, you see, if even the people cannot impose those demands as we have in the advanced democracies, it will come by the sheer law of natural order. You understand? And so whoever becomes president or the future government, the sheer will that something must be done, we must review certain things, we must find out what went wrong. They cheer people up. Let's keep hope alive.
Let's keep hope alive. That's the program, Ideas Exchange. Tomorrow, between 1 and 2 p.m., we'll repeat this program. So you can call a friend to watch us. And I want to say goodbye. My guest has been Professor Nino Duwana, a former lecturer here at the University of Ghana at the moment. And of course, you know, he has been a General Secretary of the Convention People's Party. And many people would attest to the fact that Kwame Nkrumah's regime left a mark that all of us must aspire to: industrialization, empowering the people, building the spirit of patriotism, and making people feel proud to be Ghanaians. And let's gain back the dominance we had on this continent, rather than becoming a mockery of society. For example, today we talk about Meek Mill, whose video at the presidency has brought us to that level that people would say that we are not making governance, the presidency, as beautiful as it must be for people to jealous, rather and not make it a laughing stock. That's how I end the conversation. My name is Erica Nyanyo. See you again next week. Bye for now.